Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Christy.
Hey friends, it's Christy, your credit coach. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today, let's talk about what happens if you get denied credit. So there are all sorts of credit that you can apply for, including credit cards, installment loans, mortgage loans, and even business credit. But since business credit is a little outside of my wheelhouse, I'm just going to talk about what happens if you apply for personal credit and you get denied. So let's just face it, rejection hurts. So if you apply for something like, say, a credit card or a mortgage loan, what happens if you're not approved for what you've applied for? Typically, the lender sends you something that's called an adverse action notice. So it's usually a letter in the mail, but it will list the reason or reasons why you were not approved for what you applied for. I love that we get this information because then it helps us to understand what needs to be changed or improved in order to potentially be approved in the future. So your very first step is to find out why. So does that reason make sense that was listed on that adverse action notice? There could be a number of reasons why, but let's name some of the common ones. Perhaps your credit score was too low. Potentially your credit history or profile doesn't fit the requirements for what you are applying for. So maybe there are some recent late payments or charge-offs or collections, and you know if you've listened to any past episodes that those charge-offs and collections will stay on your credit for 7 years. Maybe you have too short of a credit history or no credit history. Unfortunately, no credit history sometimes gets dumped in that same category as poor credit history. Maybe you have too many lines of credit with high balances. So if you're applying for a credit card and you have, say, 5 or 6 credit cards that seem to be maxed out, in other words, you're using all of the credit that is available to you, you might look like a risk of also not paying that credit card back. So sometimes too much debt or high balances can result in a decline. Maybe you have too many credit cards as to their standards. Sometimes if there are a lot of inquiries listed, that could also be a reason why a creditor may not extend a line of credit or a loan to you. Inquiries stay on your credit report for 2 years. Perhaps it is your debt to income ratio. If they're putting in income and then calculating debts, your debt to income ratio might be too high. So this is a different calculation than your credit utilization ratio, which is what I had mentioned just a few items back where you might be carrying high balances on, say, your credit cards. And another reason why might be a lack of verifiable income. So if the creditor can't prove that you have the ability to afford that line of credit or that loan that you're applying for, they may not be able to extend an approval. So our next step is, well, what will it take for an approval to happen? Knowing this information is the target in which you will aim for. So a lot of times it means improving your credit or establishing credit. So let's get the easy one out of the way. If you have a short credit history or no credit history, sometimes creditors don't want to be the one to be the guinea pig for you to prove your ability to borrow money and pay it back on time. So if that's you just simply don't have a deep credit history, there are a couple of things you can do. You could apply for, say, a store credit card. That is a great place to start. Make sure that if you do carry a balance or have a balance, that you keep that balance 30% or below of what is available to you in that limit. And if you're opening up a store credit card at a store that will require you to spend money on non-required items in your life, make sure that you are aware of your spending. In other words, don't go into debt to establish a credit profile just to go and buy fun things. I'm not saying you can't have fun in your life, but what I am saying is be mindful of your purchases. Another thing you could try is a secured credit card. It's where you give that credit card company your own money and you borrow against it. It's a great place to start just to prove your ability to borrow money, pay it back on time. Again, keep in mind that 30% or below of that limit available to you. And my favorite tip is to become an authorized user on somebody else's credit card. So let's say grandma agrees to add you on her Capital One credit card as an authorized user. You will get all of her credit history back from the day that she started that account. And if she has a high limit, low balance, and a long time history with that credit card, that is the best possible scenario for you to help you start building a credit profile in which other creditors will want to approve your request when you apply with them. Now, let's say you have to improve your credit. Some things that really have an impact on your credit history is your payment history. So if you have recent delinquencies, in other words, recent late payments on anything that's reporting on your credit, that's really going to have a negative impact on your scores. And also your ability to be approved for new credit moving forward. Creditors want to make money off of the interest that they collect by loaning you money, but they also want you to pay back on time. Keep this thought in mind. If you can take care of the small things, there's a really good likelihood, and this is an example, of you being able to take care of the larger things. So you want to start off with some smaller trade lines, like maybe a credit card or a small loan, and pay that baby back on time. If you have open charge-offs or collections, it might be something worth looking into to pay those off. Now, if they're really old, I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking this road because you're reopening something on that trade line that's called a date of last activity, and that can cause that collection or that charge off to have a really severe and negative impact to your credit score. So make your payments on time and try to protect how many times your credit is getting pulled. Those inquiries indicate that you're applying for different types of credit, and again, it's reported for 2 years, and that can have an impact when it comes to applying for things that you want, like an auto loan or a mortgage. But I want to take a moment here and just let you know, if you are declined for whatever it is that you have applied for, it is not reported in some flashing lights all over your credit report. Rejected, declined, not approved. It actually doesn't show up anywhere publicly or even privately through the bureaus for anybody else to see. Now, there could be some presumptions made. For instance, if I look at your credit report and you had several credit inquiries over the last few months, but it did not result in a new trade line being added to your credit, before gathering the information from you, I could presume either you were not approved or that credit line was extended to you and you declined to accept it. But whether you are approved or denied, it doesn't affect your credit score or your credit profile. But those inquiries can have an impact on your credit score. Now, let's wrap this up with some steps if your credit application has been denied. If you are applying to different companies in an effort to build your credit profile, and let's say you've applied for several credit cards, and especially if you've been denied, take a break. Those inquiries are not going to help the situation. Instead of applying for a regular credit card, maybe focus on a secured credit card. There's not a 100% guarantee that even a secured credit card will be extended, but the chances are much, much higher if it's a secured credit card, meaning it's your own money you're borrowing against. And if that reason that's listed on the adverse action notice is something that you don't agree with, perhaps ask for a reconsideration. Most credit card companies offer this, and in my research, I read that Discover Card does not have a reconsideration department, but it looked like almost all of the other bank issuing credit cards do. So how do we improve the odds of your approval? First things first, review your credit report. Is the information being reported accurate? Maybe you didn't know about that collection account, and now that you do, you can do something about it. But if there's something that's being reported that is just completely inaccurate, you can dispute that to get the appropriate information reporting. So if there are mistakes, honest to goodness mistakes reporting, go ahead and dispute that. And then take the proper steps to improve your credit profile. You're doing one of those steps now by listening to solid information to learn as much as you can about credit. So if you have high balances, work to pay those down. Not only for improving your credit score with an improved credit utilization ratio, but also to avoid having to pay 20-something% in interest, which is where most APRs on credit cards are at right now. If you have brand new charge-offs or collections, work with your creditor or collection agency to settle or pay off that debt, because a closed, zero balance collection or charge-off is going to be less harmful than one with a large outstanding balance and it's in an open collection status. The caveat to that is if it's really old, perhaps don't touch it. Make your payments on time. Remember, those recent delinquencies will really have an impact. Your payment history is 35% of your overall credit algorithm. So with everything in your power, make sure that those agreed upon payments are being made on time. Perhaps start with a store credit card or a secured credit card, or that other option that I had suggested, becoming an authorized user on somebody else's credit card. And aim to have a good credit mix. A good credit mix is going to have at least 1 to 2 credit cards with low balances, preferably a bank issued credit card. So like a Capital One, Discover card, or issued from a bank versus like a store credit card. And at least 1 installment loan. And really try to protect your credit by avoiding multiple inquiries. Because again, they stay for 2 years and they can and will impact your credit for 2 years. Now, if you get tempted with a whole bunch of those you're pre-qualified credit card offers, you can go to optoutprescreen.com. That's optoutprescreen.com or call 888-567-8688 and go through the phone tree there to opt out from receiving those pre-qualified credit card offers. So although rejection hurts and nobody wants to hear no or you're not approved or better yet, here's a declination letter, I do just want you to know that you can find out why, you can take action, and then you can try again. And just know it won't hinder your odds of approval for future endeavors. Like let's say you're not approved for a credit card now, so you go and get a secured credit card and then, fast forward a year or 2 years, you want to apply for a car loan, a student loan, or even a mortgage. That decline doesn't show up anywhere, so nobody knows it but you. Don't make it mean something. You are not rejected, just your credit scenario inside of the rules and guidelines of that creditor. Thanks so much for listening to another episode. And until next time, my friends, stay well.